So around a month ago, I saw a video by RecRap called Things Speedrunners Do That You Probably Don't Understand. And it's a video that covers some Minecraft speedrunning tricks that are kind of unintuitive to viewers. And I thought it'd be fun to do a similar thing in Terraria. So yeah, the first trick I have here is being able to identify whether a chest is a dead man's chest or a regular gold chest. On the right here, I have a regular gold chest, and on the left, I have a dead man's chest. And you can see that when I mine the gold chest, it produces some shrapnel. Whereas when I mine the dead man's chest, there's no shrapnel at all. So here, regular gold chest and dead man's chest. Something else that you'll see speedrunners do a lot is double clicking dead man's chests. So the first click will actuate the blocks below the boulder so that the boulder will start falling, and then the second click will materialize the blocks again, and the boulder will be inside these blocks and roll along them until they hit a wall and destroy themselves. And a lot of times you can combine this with using sand for immunity frames. So if I right click this dead man's chest over here, it will set off these explosives. But if I give myself immunity frames using sand, I won't take any damage from them. Something to keep in mind when you're trying to double click a dead man's chest to get rid of the boulders is that it's not 100% consistent. And it's pretty rare to find these scenarios out in the wild. This is a fabricated scenario because I couldn't find one, but you can see here that these blocks here would actuate and the boulder would drop one block and then roll along this level plane out here and not be destroyed. It's pretty rare to find these scenarios, so I kind of just double click them without thinking. But if you want to be extra careful, just block yourself off instead of doing the double click method. Something that trips a lot of players up is this wall-less house over here. I guess the main two questions they have about it are, number one, why is it valid when it has no walls? And number two, why is this one house rather than two? Because it looks like there's two compartments here. So to answer the first one, when the game is looking for if a room is missing a wall, it's looking for gaps of more than 4 tiles, horizontally or vertically. Here you can see that there are no gaps that are bigger than 4 tiles, the biggest is 4 tiles. But if I move this platform over here, suddenly we have a 5 tile gap, and this house is no longer valid, it's missing a wall. I put the tile back and it's suitable. And for the second part, the minimum area of a house is 60. So you can see that this house is 6 tiles wide, or 6 tiles tall and 10 tiles wide. And the way it calculates this area is by going to a tile and then counting this, and then going to nearby unvisited tiles, including adjacent tiles diagonally. So it could go here, and then it could go to these tiles from this initial tile. And because we have this platform over here that's offset, it can go from this tile in the right compartment to this tile in the left compartment and continue its search over here for more tiles in this area. If I added a platform right here, then there's no way for it to continue from either the left tile to the right tile or the right tiles to the left tile, and this room would be too small. They're probably wondering, like, if we can build houses without walls at all, why do we bother building these speedrunner houses with a ton of walls in them? Doesn't that just waste our time? And the answer is that NPC spawn rate is dependent on the number of unobstructed walls you have. By unobstructed, I mean walls that have nothing in front of them. So if I put a wall here, the table is in front of it, and this wall doesn't increase our spawn rate at all. But all of these walls here, with the exception of the one that's behind the torch, does contribute to our spawn rate. Every set interval of time, the game will check a bunch of random tiles throughout the map and check to see if it is an unobstructed housing wall. And if it is, then it'll spawn an NPC there. The number of tiles it selects is dependent on the layer. Like proportionally, you're going to have a higher chance of spawning an NPC in this upper surface layer than underground. You also see speedrunners build their walls in a specific order. Usually it's the perimeter first and then the inner walls. And it's because the game sometimes places extra walls when you're placing them in certain formations. So here, if you pay attention to the number of walls I have, 38, and I'll place 2 here with 1 click to 36, and then 2 again to 34, and then 3 to 31. In total, I'm placing 8 walls with just 4 clicks in this formation. So housing in this game kind of consists of 2 asynchronous operations, and the first of them I just mentioned, which is looking for random tiles to move an NPC in, and the second one would be checking which NPC can move in. And the reason we build this guide house and then move in the guide before we finish the rest of the houses is because when the guide is homeless, then it finds a tile and then it determines like, okay, the next NPC to move in will be the guide because it's homeless. Homeless NPCs always take priority. So we want to move the guide into here as soon as possible so that when we're building the rest of the houses, the next NPC that can move in is the merchant instead of the guide. And we don't waste one of these housing checks. Something else you'll see speedrunners do is bed tricking. So this check to see which NPC is going to move in happens every 120 seconds. But as some of you may know, sleeping in version 1.4 will speed up time by 5 times. And this will shorten the NPC check from 120 seconds to 24 seconds. But you can actually get out of bed as soon as your eyes close. And the check will have shortened to 24 seconds while you're not speeding up in-game time because you're not in the bed anymore. Housing in general is just really complicated and I'm only scratching the surface here, but I'll link a guide by UnFTF in the description that covers everything you could ever want to know about housing. Something you'll see players do is digging down to a pyramid while hugging the opposite wall of where the entrance is headed. So in this case, I'm hugging the left wall when the entrance is headed to the right, which seems kind of counterintuitive because it seems like you'd want to just hold the right key if you want to move right, because then you'd be positioned as far right as possible. But you can kind of imagine this like being at a red light, and optimally you'd want to start like 30 meters behind the red light so that you can accelerate ahead of time and reach the red light right as it turns green, so that you have a lot of momentum going for you already, as opposed to just starting from a dead start at the red light. In this case, I'd be moving to the right a little bit as I fall down so that I'm not hitting my head on this block, but I have a little bit of space to accelerate and I'd be moving faster by the time I reach this right wall. If I overshoot digging to a pyramid like this, I obviously don't want to dig these huge pillars of sand to get into the pyramid. But what I can do is press up against this wall and just while holding the right key, mine the sand in front of me, and I'll move into the sand without the sand falling on top of me. But this is a bit inconsistent based on the direction you're moving and your movement speed. So here I can do it from the left as well because I have no movement speed buffs. But what you'll see is if I have a movement speed buff like fruit, I can do it from the left. But I can't do it from the right. Here I'll take damage. And same thing goes for if I tried it from any direction with more movement speed like this. So if I take swiftness and major food buff, I take damage from both sides. I can still make it in by just tapping my movement key rather than holding it down, but it's kind of a hassle. So now I'll get into some movement tech, and this first one is called dehooking, which looks like this. You can see that I don't have a double jump equipped, but I'm able to kind of move upwards in midair, and this is because of the way jumps work. So when you're jumping, you have a timer that ticks down, and as this timer ticks down, you ascend in the air. And when your hook lands on something, this timer actually pauses, but doesn't reset. So you're able to continue using this timer after you let go of your hook, and your jumps reset from it. So here, I'm going to start a jump, and while I'm still holding spacebar, because if I let go of spacebar, the timer is going to reset. While I'm holding spacebar, my hook lands, and then I let go of spacebar, and then I press spacebar again and hold it to unhook and continue my jump. Like that. It sounds really complicated, but I promise you if you just practice it for like 45 minutes, you'll have it down pat. And it's even easier with like a sandstorm in a bottle because the timer that you get with a sandstorm in a bottle is significantly longer than the timer you have for a regular jump. So if you do it with sandstorm, it'll look like this. And you can see that I kind of get like 2 jumps, right? Because I'm continuing this very first jump, and then I have my second jump as well. I did use this in my 1 HP hardcore speedrun, and I don't think a lot of people noticed it. But yeah, this is probably one of the most useful movement techniques that I have. Something that you might see more mechanically skilled players doing is rail slinging, which is using a minecart track to propel yourself a little bit. So with a normal hook boost, you'll have your hook pull you in a little bit, and then before you fully come to a stop, you'll want to press spacebar so that you can use the momentum from the hook. And the same applies with rail slings. you can see that when I press mount, there's this small grappling hook that pulls me into the rail. And I can press mount and spacebar in quick succession to just grapple to the rail and then cancel it. If you get like 6 or more iron in the early game, you can craft an iron anvil and then minecart tracks to do rail slings with. I've never been good enough at rail slings to justify doing this, but I can put up a clip of Afro Man doing rail slings and it'll probably seem very worth it at that point. Something that I can do is using these pre-existing rails to do rail slings. For these, all you have to do is right click and then press spacebar, which makes it a lot easier to do. One of the most common ways of moving around in Terraria speedruns is chicken teriyaki, which is basically accelerating to max speed on a minecart and then launching yourself into the air, combined with a feather fall so that you descend really slowly. This lets you cover really long distances in a short amount of time. Usually you'll do this with booster rails from the mechanic, so in expert mode where you have this faster minecart, you'll want 5 booster rails, but in classic mode you can get away with just 3. But you can actually do this without any booster rails at all if you have a dashing item like a Shield of Cthulhu, or here I have the Tabi or Tabby or however you say it. If I mount to this topmost rail while dashing, it'll put me at full speed. Oops. And you can do this in both directions, so if I construct a rail going up and right, it'll still work. However, with Smart Cursor, it only works up and to the left. So if I have my cursor here and I right click to mount, it'll still work. But if I try it on this rail over here, it's not going to work. I'm not quite sure why it is. Seems like you can't even Smart Cursor right here. Or it's like very precise timing. But yeah. Another thing you can do to add to this is have it go upwards. So if I set it up like this, or like this, by hammering this rail at the end, it will take me upwards and eject me off of the rails, so I can launch myself upwards. This also works in both directions. And then finally, the last thing you can do is change directions. So normally I've been just holding, like dashing to the right and then holding the right key to get launched to the right. But if I dash to the right and then hold left when I mount to it, mount to this rail, oops, I'll actually get launched to the left. Sometimes you'll notice that when you place a minecart track, you'll fall through the one you're currently on. And the way you can mitigate this is by doing a little tap before you start placing. But keep in mind that this tap has to be after you do your little bounce. You can see that when I mount to a minecart track, I actually bounce a little bit before I'm fully on the minecart track, and if I tap too early, it will happen when it's in the air and I won't move at all. And this is also only applicable when you're going to the left. So here, I'd fall through, but if I place a rail to my right, I won't fall through. And this is the same for booster rails. I'd fall through, I won't fall through. There's a similar quirk that happens with lance setups, specifically the 2 wide lance setups like this. If I have it 3 wide, then it doesn't matter, but for 2 wide setups, if I mount to it from the left and start moving, I'll get flung off. And if I mount to it from the right, it'll be fine. So if you're mounting to it from the left, you want to do this little tap beforehand, so that you won't get flung off. But I would honestly just try to mount to it from the right so that I can avoid any uncertainty at all. When it comes to speedruns, you'll basically never see someone crafting a cobalt pickaxe over a cobalt drill. And this is because the main drawbacks for a drill compared to a pickaxe are that, number 1, pickaxes can benefit from mining speed bonuses while drills can't. And number 2, pickaxes have more range because, as you can see here, this drill has -1 range. But you can actually circumvent both of these. So for the range, you can see that I'm not able to mine this piece of palladium ore normally, but if I block swap it instead, I am able to. And that's because when I block swap, it uses my building range instead of my drill's range. So the negative range from the drill is basically circumvented. And I actually do get mining speed bonuses on a drill if I block swap. So you can see here that I'm mining the palladium ore by block swapping platforms much faster than if I just held down left click with a drill. And the other thing you can do with a drill is if you can click fast enough, because a drill mines every single time you click, then if you can click around 9 clicks per second or more, it will be faster than if you just held down left click. When it comes to choosing a direction to build your wall of flesh bridge, it might seem random or just like preference, but in reality you want your guide house to be on dungeon side. So in this case, my dungeon is on the left, and I'd want my guide house to be somewhere around here to the left of spawn. And this is because the V that spawns in hard mode with Crimson and Hallowed actually is centered more towards the dungeon side than the jungle side. If I set my spawn around here, I'd have to travel more to get to the Crimson and Hallowed for farming souls. One other thing that you can do to determine this is paying attention at the start of the run to the direction that the wind is moving. I don't do this because I don't trust my memory enough to not like mix and match wind directions from previous runs, but for the first 15 seconds or so of a run, the wind is headed towards the Hallowed side. By far the most common structure that we reset for, especially in modern speedruns, is a pyramid. Pyramids just have good mobility, good money, and are pretty quick and easy to get. Pyramids specifically generate from dunes, which are separate entities from oases and underground desert. So if you look here, this egg-shaped patch of sand is the underground desert, and this patch of sand adjacent to it is a dune. From what I know, the game picks a random X coordinate around 200 tiles from the center of the dune, or the origin of the dune, and at that X coordinate it will try to generate a pyramid. One way that we can tell if there's a dune on the left specifically is through this surface tunnel. If you get a surface tunnel like this near spawn, that means there will be a dune on the left, and this is because when it tries to generate the surface tunnel, if it's on sand, it's going to keep pushing it right and right and right until it's in an area that's safe to generate. So here it tried to generate maybe around here and kept getting pushed to the right until it generated here. What this means is that because you're just guaranteed a dune on the left if you have a surface tunnel, you should always go to the left if you see a surface tunnel at spawn. But if you don't see a surface tunnel on the left, then you actually have a higher chance of getting a pyramid on the right. This is a bit complicated to think about, but basically like the probability of having a dune on the left and the right are the same, but part of that probability of having a dune on the left consists of when you have a dune on the left and a visible surface tunnel. So then given that you don't have a visible surface tunnel, the probability of having a dune on the left is smaller than the probability of having a dune on the right. Floating islands always generate in a specific order, with the shiny red balloon island generating first. And because of this, we're able to use some other values that correlate with the location of the balloon island to determine where it is. And one of these values can be determined by using the type of jungle shrine material you have in your world. In total, there are 5 different types of jungle shrines. You can have ones with iridescent brick, mudstone brick, rich mahogany wood, tin brick, and gold brick here. And that was in ascending order, so iridescent brick would be very far left and gold brick would be very far right. So you can see I have a gold brick shrine here. That means my balloon island is really far right, probably in the outer fifth of this area here. This one is the shiny red balloon island because it's really far right. And another thing that helps us determine where this floating island is that the very first island, the shiny red balloon island, will always try to generate above a surface tunnel if possible. Keep in mind that these indicators of where the balloon island is aren't 100% consistent. So you can see here that this is the balloon island, but there's no surface tunnel below me, and that's because I am above a desert, and the surface tunnel can't spawn above the desert. And additionally, if my balloon tries to spawn within 200 blocks of the center of the world, it will be relocated to somewhere random and there's really no way figuring out where it is. There are a number of things that this first RNG value correlates with. So I'm on this world with the gold brick again, meaning my first RNG value is very high. This means that my red balloon island will be very far right. My shimmer will be very low. The first room in my dungeon will be very low. And I'm more likely to have more dunes. Chests that generate in the surface layer of the dungeon will get overwritten by a wooden chest, which will have a golden key instead of the original loot. So if I have a, let's say, iridescent brick, in this case I have gold brick, but if I had iridescent brick, this first room would probably be way higher up, and my chest would most likely become a wooden chest. If the chest isn't overwritten by a wooden chest, then the dungeon loot spawns in a specific order. In the speedrun, really just the relevant ones are Muramasa for like Terra Blade speedruns, Night Edge speedruns, and the second chest will be a Cobalt Shield. In this case, the second chest generates here. It's kind of hard to tell where the chests are, especially if you have a really deep dungeon. In this case, it probably generated like this way and then looped back on itself. So you have chests like these that appear higher in the order than this Cobalt Shield chest, but that's just because it looped back on itself.